Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan. And the topic of this 10-minute moan is two things. First thing I want to look at is consider why nobody in the Scottish media, despite having plenty of opportunities, has asked John Swinney one of the most important, if not the most important thing about the Westminster election that's been called. And the other thing I want to consider is why did he decide that defending Matheson would be a good idea during an election campaign. Now, the first thing I want to consider is why nobody in the media has asked John Swinney one of the things I see as a very, very important question, if not the most important question. And that is, what's his rules for this de facto referendum that the nationalists have been promised for 2 years? If you remember when Nicola Sturgeon lost her appeal at the biggest court in the land about giving the Scots the right to decide themselves if they're having a referendum or not, when that got knocked in the head, she came to the streets of London and declared that the next Westminster election, the Scots would hold a de facto referendum. And her rules for that referendum were, if the Scots voted, 50% of the Scottish public voted for independence parties, plus one vote, that would give us the right to have another referendum. And she called the election a de facto referendum. If you look back at the history of Westminster elections, you would see that that just simply wouldn't happen. She was never going to achieve her aim that she set. So then Humza, they had a change of SNP leader, and Humza came in and he changed it. He changed it quite cutely to 50% of the seats at Westminster, which could be done with about 30% of the votes, right? Because he was saying, well, if we get 50% of the seats at Westminster, that will give us the right to call a second referendum on independence. And you're like, all right, so you could do that with like a third of the vote, right? You were going to call that a mandate. These people are bonkers, because one's realised she put up a set of rules that could never be attained, and the other one put up a set of rules where you're going, right, who in their right mind would accept that as a mandate? Because you would still need the right, the agreement of Westminster. And why would anybody at Westminster agree that you got 30% of the vote, so yeah, that gives you a mandate for a referendum? These people are insane. So anyway, that's where we were. So for the last 2 years, the nationalists have believed that, and they've thought, well, okay, we can see a planned route, although it's completely, the first one was unachievable, and the second one was unagreeable. But however, there was something on the, on the desk to argue independence. But nobody has asked John Swinney a very simple question: where are you on this de facto referendum? What's your rules? Or have we binned it? Because if you binned it, the problem nationalists have got in voting for the SNP is, if they've binned that notion, then what is their route to independence? I've said this umpteen times. SNP have ruined the country for unionists. The country's a shambles. However, they've also ruined the independence dreams of the nationalists. And if John Swinney can't say what his understanding is and his beliefs and aims from this de facto referendum are, and if indeed he considers it to be worthwhile at all, then why would anybody with hopes of independence for Scotland vote for him? You would need to be nuts, because all they do is come out with white papers about how great Scotland's going to be being independent. And the last two leaders have, okay, one of them was unachievable and one of them was unagreeable, but at least they put something on the table. This is how we're going to get independence, ridiculous as the two notions may be. As it stands right now, the current leader of the SNP has no route to get independence. So why would anybody bother voting for them? They're a failed one-trick pony. And it looks like they've ignored the actual trick that they had. Because to have no plan on how you're going to achieve referendum, as still, you know, the party controlling the government of Scotland, then what do you have? Are you just going to spend more time talking about gender issues and hate bills and all that nonsense, as opposed to what you were actually formed for in the first place, and that was to achieve independence for the nationalists of Scotland? You're failing them. You're absolutely failing them. And the other thing that I just think is bonkers, on Wednesday, Sunak flung a snap election on everybody. Very, very few people seen it coming. On the Thursday, less than 24 hours later, John Swinney had something to deal with. Probably the first tricky subject he has had to deal with in the short time that he's been the First Minister. And he came out attacking the Standards Committee and their findings against his friend, who he quoted him as a friend, Michael Matheson. And when you consider the time and the political scenario we have in front of us, the wise money would have been to have a word with him and just say, look, we're just going to let this one slip. Enjoy your wee extended holiday. All the best. See, when you come back, we'll stick you in a wee committee or something and get your wages back that you've lost because you're banned for 2 months, right? Or banned your wages for 2 months. But no, John Swinney. John Swinney's first question in First Minister's questions after an election's just been called was to defend him and claim he would not support the sanctions put out and laid upon Matheson by a cross-party committee. Right? It's just mental. Why would you do that? It's like, see, if you wanted to self-destruct, that's the exact thing you should do. And I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next week when the sanctions hit Parliament. For those that don't know, the committee sat, came to its findings, agreed that unanimously, by a majority, that he should be banned for 27 days, sitting days in Parliament, and he should lose about 2 months' worth of wages. That was their sanction. But although that's a cross-party committee, their suggestion for sanctions has to be agreed by Parliament. So you can only guess as to what's going to happen when it actually reaches. Now, Swinney's already got up and said, I'm not supporting this, right? As an individual, I don't believe his words said as a party. But when their leader gets up and says, I'm not going to support this, you would kind of think that would give a step for a hint where his party's going. But if all his party voted against it and the rest of Parliament voted for it, it would go through anyway. And for him to get his way, he would need either the Greens or Alba to agree with him. I don't see that happening, to be honest with you. But the thing I find curious to watch is, what does his own party do? How are they going to vote? Right? Will they abstain? Is that what they'll do? Be interesting to watch, and I'll find out early week when it actually goes through Parliament, because I want to watch that. And another interesting comment on it was Kate Forbes. She was asked, when she was doing a junket yesterday, her opinion on it. And her opinion was a bit weird. She says, I'm not going to discuss a live inquiry. There isn't a live inquiry, unless there's something we don't know about. And she wasn't talking about branch forum here. She was asked about Matheson. And the clip I seen is, she said there's a live inquiry, and I thought she was talking about branch forum. And then she went on to say about Michael Matheson and about how John Swinney's already given his opinion on the Matheson situation. And I was like, what live investigation? That bizarre as it may seem. And she's for one, if it wasn't for party whip, I would kind of think somebody like her, somebody like Ferguson would probably say, do you know what, the committee's sat, the committee's made a decision, and the committee has said this is what they feel should happen. So yeah, okay, I'll vote for that, yeah, seems sensible. And another peculiar thing about the whole situation is, it's not as much defending Matheson that they're trying to do, they're trying to attack the process. Two things about the process. First thing, done a video about this yesterday. Matheson recommended himself to that committee to be investigated and is now claiming that it should never have been there in the first place. It was you that put it in front of the committee, you half-wit. And the other thing was the committee in the minutes, they actually discussed, the people on the committee, they discussed about their own comments that they'd made about the actual Matheson issue. And as a committee, they agreed that there was no problem with what anybody had or hadn't said that was on that committee. They want to overturn that as well. These people are mad. So anyway, if you're a mainstream journalist, do us a favour. Next time you've got a microphone in front of John Swinney's mouth, just ask him what he's doing with the de facto referendum. I can't believe why nobody has yet. Eggers' belief, you would think it would be, oh, we're having an election. John, what's your rule in this de facto referendum that your two predecessors have spoken about? So go and do that, that'd be nice. But the other thing is, the most important thing, unless you're John Swinney, Michael Matheson or any of the cult left in the SNP, everybody else, have a great day. Cheery bye now.